What's going on, guys? This is Chandler Smith, and if you're watching this video, it's because you want to buy your first rental property. And here's the deal. I just want to be real with you. There are lots of people that want to buy a rental property. However, there's a much smaller percentage that actually does. And so the goal of this video is to show you all of the things that you need to know, and more importantly, the things you need to not do so that you can be one of those that makes it to the finish line and ends up purchasing your first rental property. So I've had the opportunity to help hundreds of real estate investors get to the finish line, and I can promise you after watching this video, you're gonna know the things you need to do and not do to be able to get there. So with all of that being said, let's jump into it. All right, guys, I wanna start by telling you a story because about 10 years ago, I decided that I wanted to be a real estate investor. And so I read some books, I got on Bigger Pockets, and I started putting in offers on properties. There was one specific duplex that I will remember for forever. For forever? That sounds weird. But I will remember this property forever because it was an incredible deal and I missed out on it. I got cold feet, I bailed, someone else jumped in, and they stole the property. Now, I'd looked at probably a dozen other properties, and this was really deflating to me because I was on the fence. I didn't know if I should buy it. I didn't know where I was at. And then once it was gone, I knew I had made a mistake. So I really backed off. I looked at properties, but I was in and out. And it took me a good year, maybe even 2 years before I actually purchased my first rental property. Now, during that time frame, I had multiple people that would come and talk to me, and I'd say, yeah, I want to start investing in real estate. And they'd say, oh, don't do it. Dealing with tenants is horrible. You've got to deal with evictions. You've got to deal with broken toilets. You're going to end up breaking even, best case scenario, or you might even lose money. And I was just bombarded with all of these negative things. And the reason that I share this with you is the combination of missing out on that deal, looking at lots of properties and not ever getting one under contract, and then being bombarded by all of this negativity from other people, the majority of them which hadn't even invested in real estate, and a couple that had and had just done it incorrectly and ended up getting burned. I got cold feet in a big way. And so I look back at that situation and I think about how close I was to never actually jumping into investing in real estate. Now, the reason I share this experience with you is I was so close to just giving up completely on investing in real estate. And I'll tell you right now, the biggest reason that real estate investors fail is because they give up. And that's just the truth of it. There's so much negativity. It's so difficult to get into that first property. And so the biggest thing you can do is get that first property. Because once you get the first one, even if you bought it incorrectly, it's gonna give you so much of an advantage on everyone else to where you can say, you know what, I've done it. And whether I've done it right or wrong, I've experienced it and realized that it's not that bad. The worst case scenario is nowhere near what people try to pitch it. And I look back on my experience and I can't help but think, had I given in to all that negativity, where I'd be at right now. Because fast forward 10 years from that deal, first of all, 2 years later, I ended up buying my first rental property. And then over the course of the last 8 years, I've accumulated 136 units of rental real estate that cash flow over $500,000 a year. They go up in value over $1 million a year between appreciation and principal pay down. And I get fat tax benefits and a myriad of other things that have come from investing in real estate. And so I am begging you, step number one, don't give up, because it's intimidating, it's scary, it's difficult, it's hard, it's frustrating, and you're gonna have those bumps along the road. And the hardest part is just getting that first property. I promise you, once you can get that first property, you're gonna fall in love even if you make mistakes, and it's gonna end up paying off big for you. So first off, don't give up. All right, now that we've covered that most important one, I'm gonna plow through a ton of the other mistakes or don't do's of real estate investing as a new investor. And the reason I'm so familiar with these is I personally have been there, I've experienced it, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I also have had the opportunity through this YouTube channel and helping out my sales reps. I've got about 500 sales reps that work for me that do well, that are also investing in real estate. And so I've gotten to help and mentor literally hundreds of people through the process. I've analyzed thousands of deals on rental properties, and I've been able to see a lot of the main mistakes that new investors make. And so I'm just gonna plow through those to help get you to the finish line on your first rental property. So the first big mistake is people think that they need to buy a rental property in cash. And this is a huge misconception. Don't listen to Dave Ramsey. You don't need cash to buy the property. You need financing. You need to put a low down payment. And that's the next big mistake that people make, is if you're a new real estate investor, you need to capitalize on the fact that if you live in the property, you can get a substantially lower down payment. And I would suggest doing that. If you can get into a duplex or a fourplex or a triplex, it has to be 4 units or less. But if you're living in one of those units, you can get as low as 3.5% down, or you can do a conventional loan with 5% down or 10% down. This is going to save you a ton of money. It's going to leave you more money that you can keep in reserves. It's going to give you the opportunity to invest in real estate substantially sooner and get a substantially larger percentage return. And so first of all, recognize you don't need to buy in cash, but also recognize that you need to use financing, and wherever possible, live in your first rental property so you can get an even smaller down payment. If you don't live in it, you're gonna have to come up with 25% down, or if you do, again, you can get as low as 3.5% down. So please use financing. This leads in perfectly to the next big mistake that new investors make, and that is that they're not prepared with financing. So go in, get pre-approved, make sure that you've got your taxes in order, make sure that you've got a good debt to income ratio, make sure that you've got a good credit score. And so reach out to a loan officer, connect with them, figure out what you need to get or what you need to show them to get pre-approved for the right amount. And I know it seems overwhelming, but what's really cool about a loan officer is they're there to help you, and they help you for free going through this process. Their goal is to get you pre-approved. And so if you've got any questions on what you need to do or what you need to show or where your debt to income ratio needs to be, you can go to them. Now, you do need to understand you've got to pay to play. So you're gonna have to show that you actually have income, and you show that through your taxes, and you need to make sure that you don't have a bunch of other outstanding monthly payments that are affecting your debt to income ratio, but they can run you through all of that. So make sure you get your finances in order so you can get pre-approved for a loan, and get pre-approved early on so that you know what you're pre-approved for, so you can pull the trigger when you find the right deal. Next thing you need to avoid is don't get emotional, and please do not buy the first deal that you find. You need to get comfortable with your market. You need to understand the numbers, and you need to make sure that you're not making an emotional decision. I have so many of my sales reps that will come to me and say, Chandler, I wanna buy this rental property. I'm gonna do it right now. It's incredible. I love it. I'm gonna do it. And then we sit down and go through the numbers, and they absolutely suck. It would be a horrible investment property. And so don't get emotional. Make sure that you're looking at the numbers, you're analyzing the deals. And if you don't know how to do that, you can go and click this video. I show you everything that you need to do to analyze a rental property and figure out how those numbers work. Now, if you want a more in-depth approach, I did create a real estate investing course. You can use the link down in the description, and you can get it for only $250 right now. It's actually going up at the end of the month to $500. So use the code below. You can get that for $250, and that's gonna show you start to finish how to buy a rental property. If you don't wanna spend money, that's okay. Just subscribe to the channel. Make sure you smash the like button on this video, and check out my other videos, because they're gonna help you go through that entire process. Now, don't let me lose you, because we've got a lot more we need to cover on things you need to make sure that you avoid so you don't get burned when purchasing a rental property. I just had to take the segue to make sure that you remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. The next big mistake is all of the guesstimates that people make, and all of these are individual mistakes. So mistake number one, people guesstimate on what they can get on rents. There's so many people that will send me a deal and they'll say, Chandler, is this a good deal? And it's over in Arkansas or Mississippi or Florida or wherever it is. And I look at it and it just has the projected rents. And I'm gonna respond and I'm gonna say, look, if your projected rents are accurate, then the deal's either good or bad, and I can analyze that. But if you're going in trying to add value to this deal, or you're going in and you don't know if the rents that they've projected are even accurate, then there's no way to tell if it's a good deal, because it all comes down to if those projections are correct. And the only way you can know that is if you understand your market and you understand what that unit can rent for. So make sure you're not guesstimating on rents. The next thing that people guesstimate on is renovations. They'll go in, they'll look at the property, they'll have done a little renovation with their dad growing up, and they'll say, it's probably $10,000 to do this renovation, and they don't include it in their numbers. They just say, like I've got the extra 10 grand, we can make it work. And it's like, dude, first of all, you're guesstimating on renovations. You have no idea what you're doing. You're not including it in your numbers. And a lot of times people think, I've got this crappy property that needs a renovation, and I think I could do this renovation, and they get hung up on that when they think they're getting a good deal just because it's a crappy property, when odds are they're overpaying for a crappy property, and then they're also going to overpay for renovations. So it's going to be an absolutely horrific deal. So a lot of times for new investors, I'll say, look, stick with turnkey investments unless you're 100% confident that you know how to do renovations, you know how to analyze the numbers on those, and you know your numbers overall are going to be absolutely incredible once the renovations are done. The next big guesstimate mistake that people make is on expenses. They'll look on how I tell them to analyze expenses, and I'll tell them to set aside 12% and then to set aside 8% for management and then to set aside 6% for vacancy. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but they look at that and they're like, I could probably cut that down. I could probably manage it on my own, and my expenses probably wouldn't be 12, they'd probably just be 5. And so then they manipulate the numbers and just lower the expenses until the calculator says it's a good deal. And they're like, great, it's a good deal because I totally just BS'd all of these expenses. It doesn't work that way. You've got to make sure that you know what the vacancy in the area is, that you know what your expenses are going to be, you know your general maintenance, you know your management company, you know the money you need to set aside for all the capital expenditures that you're going to have in the future. Capital expenditures is always hard to say, but you need to understand these expenses, and so that you understand the deal. Don't manipulate the numbers until they look good, because then I can promise you they're not going to be good. Next big mistake, people buy for appreciation. So they're going to buy a property that is even negative cash flow or just breaking even in hopes that the property is going to go up in value. And so they end up buying a crappy property that doesn't pay them anything, and then actually ends up being in a market that isn't even appreciating that well. And so they don't get a good return on their money. I have pretty strict criteria for my rental properties, and I hold to that perfectly because I know exactly what I'm looking for. And when I find it, I buy. If I can't make those numbers work, then I don't buy. And I'm not going to manipulate them. I'm not going to guesstimate. It either works as a deal or it doesn't. And if it does, I buy it. If it doesn't, I pass on it. Now, here is the problem, is as a new investor, you have this analysis by paralysis. You guys have heard the quote. And it gets people where they'll go and they'll look at property after property after property after property, and they'll never pull the trigger. And so again, because they never do it, they get hung up. So a lot of times I will tell you this: if you're going to buy a property, don't buy a stupid property. Make sure your numbers work, but also don't analyze things to death and never actually buy a property. Because I will tell you, there are lots of good investors now that bought a bad first property, but because they had the confidence to make that leap, they were able to experience it. They were able to see the mistakes they made, and they were able to continue to buy more real estate. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a crappy deal, but I am telling you that if you do go out and buy a crappy deal, just make sure that you've got good reserves, that you've set up good financing, and that you've put yourself in a place where even if it's a crappy deal that's losing you money every month, you can afford it, so it doesn't put you into bankruptcy or it doesn't ruin you. Just put yourself in a place where you understand the numbers well enough to where you can analyze the worst case scenario and you know you can survive it. And if you can do that, even a crappy deal is going to move the needle for you, where you're going to understand investing in real estate. Now again, don't go buy a crappy deal, but please don't get hung up. If you find a good deal and the numbers meet your criteria, but maybe you've got concerns because you're uneasy, or you just don't have the confidence to make the jump, make the jump. You're never going to feel 100% confident. My good buddy Garrett talks with people about this all the time when making decisions. There's always going to be more that you could know. So if you're wanting to get to, I am 100% confident that this is going to be the perfect investment. I'm not going to have any problems, any concerns, any of that stuff. I'm not going to need to learn any more because I have a perfect knowledge that this is it. You're never going to get there because there's always going to be more. So get to as confident as you can possibly be. Set your criteria, hold to that criteria. And when you find the deal, have the courage to jump in, have good reserves, and know that if you did make a mistake or you were off, at least you've got reserves and you've put yourself in a place where you can still survive, you can learn from that experience, and you can move on to the next deal. Because again, the biggest thing that keeps new real estate investors from succeeding is that they give up. And a lot of people give up because they get stuck analyzing and never making the jump. All right, next big mistake is not putting in offers. And the next big mistake after that is putting in offers but not having proper contingency. So you should be putting in offers like crazy, and you should make sure that they've always got a contingency where you've got 15 days to do an inspection and you can bail if it's unsatisfactory, and that you've got a contingency on your financing. So now you're protected because you can go into a deal, you can know you're not going to lose your earnest money if you bail out because you find something, or even if you get cold feet. I like it worded in a way where I can go, and even if it's a clean inspection, if I get to the point where I'm like, you know what, something else isn't right, or financing falls through, or I don't feel good about this deal because I found this new information, you can still bail. That's what due diligence is for. And so make sure that you're doing due diligence properly and that your contract is structured in a way where you can bail and get all of your earnest money back within that window. And then make sure that you know what that window is and you do all of your due diligence and let them know in time if you're going to bail or go forward with the deal. Now, you also need to understand this is your reputation on the line. If you go through and you get a bunch of deals under contract and you're constantly bailing, you might get a reputation in your area and that could hurt you in the future. So you want to be careful with that. But again, don't be afraid to put in offers and go into due diligence, because if it's structured correctly, you can do that. And then if you don't like the deal, you bail on it and it's not that big of a deal. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is so many new real estate investors don't invest because they're worried about the bad tenants. They're worried that they're not going to be able to fill the property. They're worried that they're constantly going to deal with phone calls, or they're going to have an eviction, or the building's going to burn down, or whatever it is. All of these things you can protect yourself with getting a management company, with making sure that you have insurance, with making sure that you look at the area and just see that there's a need for housing. And if you've done your research on those things and you've set them up properly, I'm telling you, it's not hard to rent your unit. And the worst case scenario isn't that, it goes vacant for the next 10 years and you end up taking out bankruptcy. Usually the worst case scenario is that it takes you an extra couple weeks to fill, and maybe you've got to drop the price on your unit $50 so you can get it filled, so your number's off by $50 a month for the next year because maybe you analyzed it improperly. Now, if you're analyzing it way off and it's off by, $1,000, then that could be a concern, but you shouldn't be doing that. If you've done your research, even a reasonable amount of research, not crazy, you can get into a property, and your worst case scenario shouldn't be that bad. So I'm telling you, when you have those conversations with the people that are saying, don't do it, it's gonna be miserable, you're gonna break even, evictions, people not paying rent, you're not gonna be able to fill it, don't give in to those emotional things, because I've been there. I've had those conversations. I've felt those feelings of, oh crap, I don't want to do this. And now I've felt the joys of owning 136 units of rental real estate, over $20 million of real estate that literally makes me millions of dollars every single year. And it's absolutely incredible. And it started with one dinky duplex that actually wasn't even a duplex. It started with one condo that I bought, and then a duplex, then another duplex. And I'm telling you, it could have started and ended with that first duplex that I looked at, I got cold feet, and I bailed, and I leaned into the negativity, and I never bought another rental property. And had I not done that, I would be in a completely different situation. Mentally, financially, maybe even spiritually. Like, investing in real estate has been an incredible experience for me. I've learned so much about me, myself. I've made incredible money. I've been able to build this empire, and it's been a huge blessing for me and my family, and it'll be a huge blessing for my future family. And so I'm begging you, don't lean into that negativity, all right? Hold the course and be the guy that makes it to the finish line, because I promise you, if you can make it there, whether you mess up or have mistakes or have difficulties along the way, you're gonna fall in love and you're gonna buy another one and another one and another one, and it's gonna be a huge blessing in your life. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure remember to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the future videos where my goal is to help you to build a huge passive income through investing in real estate. And if you loved this video and you wanna learn more, I really believe my real estate investing course is an absolute steal right now. For 250 bucks, you can get, I think it's like a dozen hours worth of content that shows you everything that you need to know from start to finish to buying, single family rental properties, multifamily, and big multifamily real estate, and going through due diligence, analyzing deals, all of that fun stuff. And so the link is in the description if you want to pick up the course. Now, guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna look forward to seeing you next time.